privilege to be able to speak to you all today.
Где он?
This is going to be our best session of the day because I think this is one of the last. And so I want to make it fun. I'm not going to bore you with
Джей,
slides. I'm
кажется, я
going to
знаю.
talk to you about
Райан.
my own career, how I got started, as you are. You know,
Джей.
I guess
Ryan.
about to go onto a very similar
Тут
journey.
написано внизу,
And
ты не
so
видишь, что ли?
I thought I'd make it a little bit more personal, start with that, and then move on to our business, right? And teach you about what we do here every day in our market.
Нет, там нету имени, бро.
And this is, you know, I'm biased, but I think the best part of our business at Goldman Sachs, and if you look through our results, this is certainly the area of the firm that has been making the most money of late. So I like to tease my colleagues in the other division in a very friendly way.
Я его знаю,
But
я
I
его знаю, я его
think
поздравлял с днем
being
рождения.
in markets is absolutely fascinating.
Я знаю.
And I'll run you through that.
Да,
And
оно
then
ясно.
I thought we'd leave the kind of
Ну, с
back
вопросами
end
накидай,
to
почему я
questions,
живу не без вопросов.
also for me to go through, I
Ты
guess,
дурак, ты там такие долбанавские вопросы задал.
my advice, you know, as you embark on your professional careers. So once again, thank you so much for having me. My background, my name is Jay. I'm Indian, but my family's lived in Hong Kong for 100 years. And so my kids, I've got 3 kids. They are 5th generation from Hong Kong. And I met my wife. She's from Boston, in university there. And so I went to a university called Bentley, just outside of Boston. And I actually had no idea that I wanted to get into this. In fact, my uncle was a stockbroker, and I never. It always looked really cool what he was doing, and
Как же он долго рассказывает?
you know, over the years we became closer and closer, and I asked him one day, you know, after I graduated, I studied accountancy, and he said to me, look, go and get your degree, do your accounting, and after that, that'll be a great foundation to come into work in finance. And so I did that. I worked for Ernst & Young in New York right out of college, and living in New York was just a fantastic opportunity. Similar to Hong Kong, the energy, the buzz, you know, being in these incredible global cities as you're coming out of college is such a privilege. And I worked for Ernst & Young, and after 2 weeks, I actually called my dad up and I said, I want to quit. This is not for me. This is you know, so painful, so boring. And I was essentially ticking and tying accounts, matching accounts manually from 8 in the morning until 2 in the evening every night. And it was serious hard training. And I remember calling my dad up here in Hong Kong from New York saying, I want to quit.
Кстати,
I
ответил
want
его
to quit. I want to
комментарием,
do something
он
different.
что-то поставил, я, может, поэтому
And
я
he
это
said,
может, он смотрел мою...
you got to follow this through. You've got to get your CPA. And I'm really glad I did, because that, for me, you know, you all on the screen go to, you know, I'm seeing like all of your schools next to your names, LSE and NUS, it's HKUST, Boston College, UPenn. I mean, you're going to all of the best schools. Bentley was not as well known, and having that extra certification in my CPA became really useful to me. So I did that. I muscled through it. And I guess my first lesson to you is, in your work careers, resilience really matters. And so, you know, I've been now working for 20 years, resilience is going to be a huge thing in your toolkit. So, we'll come back to that at the end. So I finished my 2 years at Ernst & Young, and then I came home for Christmas, and I spoke to my uncle who was in finance, and I said, would you be able to introduce me to some of your friends? And he said, sure, let me help you. And I arrived back in Hong Kong. I called my uncle up, and he said, I'm actually in Australia, and I can't help you, but let me give you the name of one person that may be able to meet with you. And so the guy met with me, and he was the head of equity sales at Macquarie. And he said, I'm only taking this meeting because I'm friends with your uncle, but I really don't want to be here, and I don't have a job for you. But I will do you one favor. I will give you the names of all of the heads of sales if you really want to get into the market. I don't have their emails, I don't have their phone numbers, but I know their names. And so I spent the next 2 weeks cold calling every firm on the street and their heads of sales. I would use Google and call up the switchboards. And so I actually cold called Goldman, cold called Morgan Stanley, cold called all of the heads of sales at these different firms. And I was actually very fortunate that Goldman gave me a call back. And I met the person that has my job today, who was running Asia sales, and his name was David Torrable, and he was very kind and met with me, and I was so blown away by the way he conducted himself, his kindness, his openness. I just knew that Goldman was a really special place. Unfortunately, he didn't have a job for me, but I stayed, connected to the firm for the next decade. And I knew that I wanted to eventually get there. Now, in my cold calling journey, BNP, the head of sales there, called me back. And he called me, he said, you called me 47 times. You've got to be the most irritating little expletive that I've ever come across. And you'd be perfect for sales. And so that's how I got my start in financial services. I mean, to move from auditing to being on a trading floor was a huge leap of faith. And so I started my job in March of 2008 on the trading floor for BNP in Hong Kong. Now, if all of you are students of history and financial markets and economies, you would know that I basically joined right at the top, right before Lehman Brothers would end up going under 6 months later. And so I was given a real baptism of fire, and I didn't really know anything about finance. I just knew how to hustle and cold call people. And so I learned a lot, and I was literally the coffee run for the first year. I was printing out things and just trying to be helpful. And I guess that comes to my second bit of advice. The people that, and hopefully you all apply for Goldman internships, and I'd love to meet you all in due course. But once you have your junior year internships, the people that will really stand out in this group are going to be the people that just want to be helpful. That goes such a long way. And because I was always trying to be helpful, I got noticed on the floor, and an MD was retiring, and the first, his biggest client was a firm called Fidelity, who are still to this day, one of the largest 5 asset managers in the world, and a huge partner and client of all of the banks on the street, including Goldman Sachs. And in my boss's infinite wisdom, he said, look, if we've all struggled to cover this account, maybe this annoying kid can give it a go. And I did, and that was the inflection point in my career. And it was, you're going to be given these opportunities when you start your job, and some of them will change your life. And for me, it was being able to be given one big account and turn that around was just completely instrumental in my career trajectory. And so, I talked to you about resilience. I talked to you about the importance of diving in and being helpful, but make sure when you get an opportunity that you really appreciate that these moments can completely change your life. And so because of that one client, I was fast-tracked and became the head of sales 5 years later. And then that opened up an opportunity for me to move to Singapore, where I had my first 2 kids, and I ran our businesses in Southeast Asia. Now, all throughout this period, I stayed in touch with Goldman. And just, if you're going to be in financial services, there is, for me, there was one place to do it, right? And this is the premier financial services firm in the world. And I always aspired to be here. And I got that chance 10 years later. I had to wait. So all of you are so, I'm so envious that you're here and, you're in your freshman, sophomore, junior years. I think it's sophomore, right? Your sophomore years, and you have the connectivity to potentially join the firm. Because I wish I had, the start of my career and was an intern at GS. And so 10 years on, I got a shot, and it actually was to take a step down in role, and no longer be a head of sales, but just to come in and be a producer. And I took that risk. I bet on myself. And I'm so glad I did, because it is, I've been here at the firm now 8 years, and it has been the most rewarding period of my career. And I love the firm dearly, and it's just an amazing place to work. And the people, I was a bit nervous coming in because Goldman's got this kind of huge reputation, and I was just very nervous to come in, especially at the senior level. And I've been blown away by the culture and how collegiate this place is, the focus on apprenticeship, and just how nurturing the firm has been to me since joining. And so it's been great. I would say, today, after being a producer for a number of years, I was able to get promoted here to become co-head of our sales team based out of Hong Kong, which is our hub for the region. So that's really exciting. And, I'm conscious of time, but, I would just leave you with, I guess, that personal anecdote of mine and how much I've loved being here at GS. And I really hope all of you get to start earlier than I did. Now, I know this subject for today was about our markets division. And so, I'm very proud to be able to represent Goldman's markets business. It is the biggest part of our firm. It is, a business that has been on fire of late. And I would say, really simply, we are providing access to capital to corporates, right? You would have just met someone from our banking division. So we're taking our clients from banking and we're marrying them with our clients from the markets division. So I mentioned my first client in the business was Fidelity. That's a great example. We'll use that. So today, I think we've probably been on 50 IPOs and follow-on offerings in Hong Kong. What does that mean? That means that 50 companies that we've been working with on the banking side, maybe some of you know a company called Minimax, or in the past Pinduoduo, or Tencent, Alibaba. We've been part of taking all of these companies over time, Meituan, taking them public. And then, so again, we're using our banking relationship, and then we're using our partners on the market side like Fidelity, and we're trying to find capital for these corporates from institutional investors. And so that can be in the form of primary equity, where the company is issuing new shares. It can be in the form of secondary equity, where a big shareholder sells down. That can be in the form of a convertible bond. That can be in the form of credit. And the other thing worth noting so just think of us as a conduit between corporates and institutional investors. I think that's a really, just broad thing to think about. When you look at the markets division, that's what we're trying to achieve, right? We're trying to get our corporate issuing clients the best price for their company, and being able to sell it to our institutional customers so that there's still a further runway for growth, right? And they can make money in the public market, either in the form of CVE, credit, or equity. Now, our business on the market side gets more nuanced, because some of our institutional clients and traditional asset managers, hedge funds, pension funds, they want access to leverage. And so that is our prime brokerage division. Our PB is a way for us to issue our clients more leverage, very simply. And it's also a conduit for our hedge fund clients to come in and borrow inventory and short stocks through us. Many of the biggest clients of ours today run market neutral mandates. So you would have seen Citadel, Millennium, Balyasny, Marshall Wace, these flagship hedge funds in the news. They're very well known for having market neutral product offerings. And so they need to not always be completely long shares or markets. They've got to find a way to hedge that. And so our prime brokerage division has the ability to provide leverage, also provide market access and shorting. The other thing worth noting, again, because people are always looking for hedging solutions and reducing the vol and beta that they have in their portfolios, our derivatives business is a big part of that. And so here I've kind of talked about the different pillars of our markets business. On the one hand, we are conduits for capital markets, so that's one pillar, right? Matching effectively buyers and sellers, right? Sellers of stock and buyers of stock, corporates and institutions. So that's one pillar. The second is providing some of our clients market access and leverage. The third is hedging solutions via derivatives. And I guess the fourth is liquidity solutions, right? If you are a huge, if you're a huge institutional investor and you need to sell, $1 billion worth of stock, sometimes you're going to need a bank to help provide liquidity. You may not find that in the market, right? Market liquidity is only so much. So I'll give you a great example. The entire Philippine market trades less than $200 million a day. So we'll go back to my client Fidelity. They manage $7, $8, $10 trillion today, right? And they probably have $2 or $3 billion of exposure to the Philippines. If the market is only trading $200 million a day, you're going to need someone to come in and provide you liquidity. And so these are the four pillars of our markets business that I think are really important to come away from. So one, again, I want to just repeat myself. Our job is to marry capital, number one. Number two is provide market access, leverage, and inventory. The third is hedging solutions through our derivatives franchise. And lastly is serve as an intermediary and provide liquidity. That is the core of the markets business. And I guess what drives that? It's global economies, right? So we're in the midst of a huge AI cycle, and there's an arms race to provide hyperscalers to build more data centers. With that, every one of the companies in Asia in the AI ecosystem needs to build more capacity. How are they going to build more capacity? They need to raise equity. They need to raise debt. They need convertible bonds, right? And so they need us. And that's why if you look today, just a great stat for you all is there are 500 IPOs pending with the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. That is an all-time record. So the amount of business that corporates are getting, and thus in turn needing access to capital, is larger than ever. And so this is where our role as an intermediary comes in, and our role, with the other parts of those businesses all ties together. So look, I'm conscious that we only have about 5 minutes left. I wanted to keep it high level. I wanted to make sure it was personal. I also wanted to share my perspectives on Goldman Sachs. Maybe we can open it up to 2 or 3 questions and see if anyone.
Sure, thank you, Jay. I think I can help manage the Q&A session, as I can see the hands raised in the meeting. So I think our first one on my list is Myra from NUS. Please feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, Jay. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm Myra from NUS, and just now you mentioned that you've worked in New York, Singapore, and Hong Kong. So I was just wondering, beyond the fact that Asian markets are growing at such a fast pace, what other opportunities do you see for, say, a junior starting their career in equity sales here in Asia?
Hey, Myra. I think that's a great question, and something that I think Goldman does better than anywhere else. Firstly, congrats on going to NUS. I did a lot of recruiting out of NUS. It's a great school. I was in Singapore for 5 years, and you guys have some amazing universities there. On your question specifically, so what the firm loves to do is send its best people around the globe. So I actually hired someone out of university here at HKUST. I see a lot of people at UST on the screens. Her name is Stephanie Cho. Steph was an intern with us, then came on as a full-time worker on our team in Hong Kong. After crushing it with us for 3 years, she came up to me and said, Jay, I've never lived or worked anywhere outside of Hong Kong. I want to go and work in New York. And within 6 months, she was on the trading floor at 200 West, working, doing exactly what she was doing here, but she moved from the Asia team to the US desk. One of my colleagues who I spoke to last night, Andrei Alipov, who's on my team, has worked for Goldman now in Boston, in New York, and in London. He's 26 years old. And so the firm loves to send its best people across different geographies. It's a source of pride for us in terms of mobility. And for me as a leader, I want to see my best people travel around the world and represent Hong Kong and, everything that, bring our best practices there. I think that's any good manager would want that. And I think, again, this is a firm that thrives on apprenticeship and really believes in mobility.
Thank you.
Next question.
We do have a follow-up question, if you don't mind. So you mentioned that you can move from Hong Kong. There's internal mobility, so you can move from Hong Kong to the US. I was wondering if it's common for salespeople to do this, because I thought that client relationships are pretty region-specific.
Yeah, I think it is very common. We see that a lot. I think that with the strength of a platform like Goldman Sachs, it becomes a lot less about that star culture. It's my clients, my relationship. They want to speak to Goldman not because of Jay, but because of Jay plus Raymond plus Shirley and the entire ecosystem that we have across the firm. And so I think it's not really about selling yourself once you're at the firm. It's selling the firm and the people who are with you. And so if you have that ability to sell the firm, you can really go anywhere.
Thank you.
All right, thank
You're
you
welcome.
for the question. I think perhaps we can take one more. Alicia Lin from Hong Kong.
Hi, really great to meet you. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your personal journey. And I actually want to ask you something more on a personal regard. I really admire your story, and I think you shared a lot on how being resilient, helping others, and it sounds like really being persistent in the vision you have for yourself has helped you be where you are today. So how do you recommend people at our stage of life set our vision? What do you think, maybe when you look at your junior staff, that you think maybe we should set our vision beyond just landing a job in finance? Or what are the kind of goals and values you think we should be keeping in mind as we look ahead at building our career and our later life?
Yeah, I think that's, Alicia, that's a really good question. I think that you have to be almost single-minded in your vision for yourself, right? And I don't think that means you need to pigeonhole yourself in a certain, in a certain seat or a certain firm or a certain geography. But I think that you gotta be single-minded in your vision for yourself. And so for me, I wanted to be the best at client service on the street in Asia, right? That is a personal goal, right? To be the best in my field in Asia. Number 2 was to be a leader at the firm I worked at. And number 3 was to make a lot of money for my family. And so I think if you have your mantra, right? And those are quite big things, right? It's not specific to Goldman. It's not specific to an industry.
По-моему,
But I
kind of
just-
the best, нет?
Нет, второй.
You know, for me, it could be client service within private wealth. It could be trading, but I think it's again having a big enough bucket and 2 or 3 things that you want to hang your hat on and say, you know, that's my North Star. That's what I want to achieve in my life and my career. And so for me, it was, you know, and maybe I will not always be in equity sales, but the fact that I want to be the best in the field that I work at is like a call to action. The fact that I want to be a leader at the firm wherever I'm working is a call to action. The fact that I want to make a ton of money for my family is a call to action. And so that's how I think about it, is making it really simple, but yet, you know, in dark times where you need to be resilient, and there will be dark times, you've got to be able to go back to what you want to achieve.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the questions, and thank you, Jay, for joining us today. I think we will have to quickly move forward to the next session. So I know, thank you, Jay. So I know a lot of hands are raised in this meeting, so don't you worry. You will get ample of time to network with our divisional representatives during the in-person session next week across Singapore and Hong Kong. So we will have all your questions answered by then. So for the next session, very happy to invite Raymond, who is already in the room, and also Serena to join us on the screen to host a skill set workshop to help you navigate the case study next week. So over to you, Serena and Ray.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Toby. Ray, should we just quickly introduce ourselves? So my name is Serena. I cover off investment banking recruiting for the region. Ray, do you want to go quickly?
Yeah, sure. I am leading the sales and trading campus recruitment in Asia. I've been with Goldman for around 9 years. I see some of the familiar faces on the screen as well, so welcome to our business academy.
Awesome. So really quickly, next slide please, Youngwon. You might be wondering why Skills Workshop is something that's on the agenda. And one of the things that we want to do with the Business Academy is to actually help you understand that maybe whatever you think about when it comes to what your preferred division is or what you think you should be doing or you're good at might be different from what you actually should be doing. And so we want to take a minute just to help you recalibrate and maybe even figure out, after you've heard a little bit about the divisions that you've seen today, do you want to actually explore something a little bit different? Is something that you've heard a little bit more interesting or better fit to your skills? And we want to help you rejig thinking about choosing a division. Usually when students recruit, especially when I was in college, students usually choose division first and then go, okay, I'm going to like that job. Let me make sure my CV looks as good as possible for that job. I want to help you by the end of this next 20 minutes to flip that on its head, and I want you to go skill set first. So instead of thinking, should I recruit for IBD? Should I recruit for sales and trading? Should I recruit for asset management? I want you to go, and by the end of this next 20 minutes go, what am I naturally good at? And where can that create value in which divisions? So we're going to go through that process right now. Next slide, please, Youngwon. How we're going to do that is we're going to go through 3 pieces. This is the journey we're going to take over the next few minutes. We're going to start with a really, really quick strengths process. So when we're doing that, we're going to get you to reflect on a little bit around what you think you're good at and how that looks like. And then we're going to connect that to what skills are, your strengths to your skills. And then finally, we're going to use that to triangulate off what potential divisions could look like for you. And ideally, you walk away from today's session, and also by the end of Business Academy, being open to applying for one more division or one more role that you potentially, hopefully, did not discover or were willing to try before this. So first part of what we're going to do is the strengths part. Youngwon, can you start on the next page? So to help you figure out your strengths, this is the part where I want you to take 30 seconds to close your eyes. You can meditate if you want. I'm going to close my eyes. And I want you to think about, is there a specific moment in the last 12 to 18 months where you felt really like switched on, energized, in the zone, or something that happened where you're like, I'm really proud of how I handled that or the outcome of that. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to a minute now to think about that. It can be a challenging academic project. It could be a moment in your clubs that you're really proud of, a sports victory, a team conflict that you resolved. Just 30 seconds now to think about it. You can write it down if you want to, or just have it in your head. And I'd like for people to kind of just reflect a little bit. Okay. Next slide, please, Youngwon. Now that you've thought about it for a little bit, I want you to think about how did you achieve that outcome? When I say how, I mean think about the methodology that got you there. What did you do? What did you think? What did you say? What were the actions you took? What were the things that you had to put on or try or say or talk to, or like stuff you had to pull out of your hat that you used to get there? And then maybe we can have one or two people put up their hands and maybe we can hear from the group a little bit. Okay. Anybody want to volunteer their answers? You can use the raise hand button, just like you did just now. I'm very nice, don't worry. I don't bite. Anybody wants to share? Okay, we'll do Yue from Babson. I haven't seen a Babson person in a long time, so welcome.
Thank you. The moment that I think about is when I stood on the stage and performed in front of my entire school and in front of parents for my Babson Dance Ensemble team. And I think how I achieved that outcome is by going to practice every week and also stepping out of my comfort zone and learning new dance styles. And I often check in with choreographers and also the people on my dance team to make sure that we can all go work together as a team. And I think that's how I achieved that outcome.
Awesome. So what I'm hearing, and you can let me know, is relentless work ethic, resilience, and also it sounds like a little bit of teamwork in there, right? From working with your friends and your dance kind of club around you. So that's really great. So those are some of the things I want you to hold on to. I'm gonna quickly call on maybe Casey from HKUST.
Yeah, so something that I think I'm really proud of recently is managing to land a couple clients for my startup. Just being able to network and put myself out there and really pitch my product well. I've also developed the product myself, so I have a very deep understanding of how everything works, and being able to convey and break things down into very simple, easily digestible parts for them to really understand, and managing to actually have an outcome and a product out of my actions.
Great, but I guess my question is, how did you do that? Did you spend hours researching? Were you bouncing ideas off of your co-founders? Were you speaking to the investors of your company? What's the how?
I think the how was mainly just being confident and practicing and just networking and talking to a lot of people.
So talking, pitching, networking, constantly going. Lovely. Okay. So thank you all for your participation. I'm going to have you put your hands down now, but that's what I mean by figure out the how and think about that. And on the next slide, I want you to hone in on the how and think about, okay, what was the bit that I enjoyed the most? And when you look at the things that you enjoyed the most and the things that you're naturally good at, those are usually the things that you naturally have as strengths. And the reason why we're spending so much time on this is because how I want most students, and I've said this to the many NUS students who are in the room who have spoken with me multiple times, is I always say that people should go strengths to skills to jobs, not jobs to CV to then recruiting for that job. And so when I think about strengths, a lot of you always come across with some very similar things. Some of you say that your general enjoyment is that you love helping people get stuff done. Or you love talking to people. Raymond knows I love talking to people. I'm on the phone every damn day. Everybody in Singapore office knows that all I do is talk and convince people to go with the idea that I have. That's what I enjoy doing. But think about the table that you have in front of you right now and think about what do you enjoy? And that could be something that you naturally have as a strength. And now on the next slide, I want you to consider that using that to triangulate something that you're good at in terms of a job. So going from strengths to skill in terms of what you could be good at in the workplace is actually a very intuitive thing. So now maybe the things that I got you to write down, think about what do I enjoy in terms of the how, and what does that mean that you could be good at. For example, the person who said that she loved to dance, that could be something that means that maybe it's about detail-orientedness. You worked at that over and over and over and over again. That could be about detail-orientedness. And that could mean that if you enjoy that, you could be really good at mitigating risks that exist in different complex processes. The reason why I'm saying all of this is because on the next slide, things that you're naturally good at translate very naturally into skill sets. But my question is, are strengths and skills the same? Any taker, strengths or skills, are they the same? Are they not the same? You can just unmute yourself and call out an answer if you have it. Caleb, you wanna go?
Yeah, sure. So, I would think skill is something that you can train over time.
Yeah.
You can hone your skills by practicing a lot. For example, again, but strength is something that someone who is naturally good at talking, right? A lot of people can train to be a good public speaker, but you can never, for example, be another Obama if you don't have the natural strength of public speaking to begin with. So I think that's the biggest.
Awesome. Thank you, Caleb. So you're right. So on the next slide, why I took some time to get you guys to talk about your strengths is because the strength is the engine. It's what naturally gives you the motivation to go, I want to keep doing this. I want to keep going and naturally rely on this thing that I have. But what I want you guys to take away today is go from what energizes you to what could be beneficial for your career and use it as the vehicle. So the strengths are the engine, but the vehicle, how those strengths come through as beneficial and impactful in the workplace is the actual skill sets. So from, like Caleb said, you are naturally good at most of your strengths, but your skills take time to work at. I wasn't born as a good speaker. I was probably a big yapper as a kid, but how I present now is very different from how I presented as an analyst because I kept working on that skill. But because I had the natural strengths, it was easy for me to continue to refine that skill until I got to a point where I was good at something. And so what I want you guys to do now, on the next slide, please, Youngwon, is take your strengths and figure out, 2 slides too far, and how you can actually figure out what your skills are. You are good at servicing client requests. That means client coverage as a skill. Could be that you're very good at relational building, like people who are naturally empathetic, naturally gravitates towards long-term relationships, like somebody, like all the people that talked about client coverage earlier today. It could be that
getting to know and pitching for clients. Maybe sales actually is a good career.
Things like analytical work could translate to data analytics, and maybe even things like simple things like, hey, you really love driving processes.
No, I don't always talk.
Maybe you're president of a student club, or you were president of your student body. That means that you could be really good at systems thinking, a process optimization down the line. Why we're doing this is because we want you to be able to go, I'm not just good at things, but when I'm good at things, I have names of actual skill sets that I can put down on paper and figure out what I can do from there. So this is just a little bit about, if you go to the previous slide, Youngwon, how we can go from, I know what my strengths are, to these are the things I'm good at and that can become a skill for me to leverage on. This is a leverage point for me. And now, the last point is, how do you use that to triangulate off a career for you? So next, in 2 slides, please, Youngwon, Raymond's going to take over and help you understand a little bit about how you're going to use those skill sets to figure out the divisions that could be a good fit for you.
Thank you, Serena. So look, now we'll go through 3 examples. I think the first one on the slide itself, Sarah.